Good morning, Kingsway Dragons. Good morning. I'm really glad that we're all together today and our ceremony is about to begin. As we lead important people into the gym this morning, I am going to ask you to stand, and you will remain standing until I tell you you may be seated. Okay? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for our national anthem performed by our Kingsway Regional Dragon Singers, followed by the presentation of our colors by the Semper Fidelis Detachment of the Marine Corps League.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare
and a half step, or up.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Good morning, and welcome to Kingsway Regional High School and our 28th annual Memorial Day ceremony. My name is Stephanie Fox-Mano, and I am honored to stand here today as your high school principal, continuing this hallowed tradition. Each year at Kingsway, we are honored to play a small part in ensuring that the true purpose of Memorial Day is never forgotten. This year's theme is Liberty's Children, Our Sons and Daughters. In searching for a theme for this year's ceremony, the Memorial Day Committee reflected on the brave men and women who have given their lives in the name of our country's survival, the freedoms of its citizens, and the ideals for which the country stands. More specifically, we came to realize how little we know of so many who sacrificed everything. In today's ceremony, we will learn more about our fallen dragons as well as other soldiers, emphasizing the child or person they were. This year, we had the opportunity to talk with students, teachers, and parents and their reflections on Memorial Day. At this time, I would like to draw your attention to the 2023 Memorial Day video.
After 3 days of fighting, nearly 51,000 Americans were left dead on the Gettysburg battlefield, the site of the bloodiest battle on American soil. Many of the fallen were just boys about the same age as our high school students. At the dedication ceremony of the Soldiers National Cemetery, Abraham Lincoln recited just 272 words, an uncharacteristically short speech for the time, but one that eloquently captured the meaning of war and the democratic ideals that united us all as Americans. Lincoln would go on to say, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." 3 years after the war, General John Logan, of Logan Township's namesake, issued a special order that May 30th, 1868 be observed as Decoration Day, the first Memorial Day. A day set aside for decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of the country with flowers and whose bodies now lie in almost every churchyard in the land. In 1994, then Principal Tom Coleman gathered Kingsway High School students around the flagpole to remember our very own dragons who sacrificed their lives so that we can enjoy our constitutional guarantees of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness within the democratic ideals Lincoln spoke about at Gettysburg. Now a time-honored tradition at Kingsway, This ceremony's success is largely due to the collaborative efforts of so many students, faculty, and staff since its inception, and is continued by those who have joined our Dragon family since. Today, I have the privilege of talking to a few of our students about the importance of Memorial Day and how they reflect on the sacrifices made by our service personnel. Here is what they have to say.
Memorial Day is an opportunity to reflect on the past and appreciate the little things that we have here in America.
A day where we can remember those who are falling before us and those who protected us and give us the freedom that we have today.
It's an opportunity to thank the veterans that have came before us and honor those veterans that had made the ultimate sacrifice.
We call attention to this small table which occupies a place of dignity and honor. This is the fallen soldiers' table. The chair is empty. They are not here. Let us not forget the sacrifices of those and their families.
When I think of Memorial Day, I think of service. I think about our freedoms in our country and the sacrifice that the men and women have made to protect our freedoms.
It's all about honoring people who have served, especially the people who have died for the country and the freedoms that we have today.
They gave up a lot of their time and energy and some lives, and sometimes we forget about that.
They are thinking about others before themselves, and that is sacrifice.
Sacrificing their lives and their well-being for their families' lives and all of our lives every single day.
My dad was my biggest role model because he was in the Navy and he was just talking about how it made him like a better man and everything and how it's important to serve your country, and he's one of the main reasons that I joined the armed forces.
He made the decision himself and I think he's comfortable with it, and we're certainly supportive.
I picked the Army because I feel like I'm going to learn more about myself.
The Kingsway ceremony kind of like brought some sort of like inspiration or motivation to me, and it's what originally got me to join the military. Last year, it kind of sparked something in me, and it didn't go away. Eventually, a few months later, I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
I want you to think of someone across the world. Someone you have never met, never talked to, someone you do not even know the name of. Would you, right now, be willing to sacrifice your life for them? Most of us cannot even fathom the amount of selflessness that would take.
My family's not a huge military family. Only a few of them have served. My uncle being one of them, my grandpa on my dad's side. When they mentioned it in the past, I could see how much it meant to them, that they carry with them all these decades after they're done serving. And that always stayed in the back of my mind growing up. And it was always something where I thought this could be something I could pursue and be a part of.
When I first told my parents that I wanted to join the military, my mom was really scared.
You make the decision and then you have to be approved. So everybody was on eggshells. We were all praying.
But they realized that it was a good idea and it was probably the right thing to do.
He started probing a little more, so it was kind of exciting. It's kind of still scary too.
My parents, they support me fully, but they're also very nervous.
My parents were really supportive of my decision, and they made sure they, as well as myself, was educated on everything that was needed and required over the next 4 years in service beyond, and just making sure that I understood what I was signing up for in a way.
When I signed the papers, first person I told was my brother. He wasn't very excited about it, but he now understands the reason why I'm doing this.
My parents, when I told them, at first was a little shocked, especially going into the process. We really didn't know anything. Attending the academy and doing a lot of research was definitely necessary. We're kind of all going into it with an open mind, and I think they're excited to learn as I do as well.
We visited the academy, and you're on the site and you look around at all these men and women in uniform, and he looked at me and looked me in the eye and said, I can see myself here. I can see myself serving beyond the 4 years of the academy. My role as a parent is to let him fly.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars holds the Voice of Democracy audio essay contest every year for high school students, and this year's prompt was, why is the veteran important? We've always been told to thank our veterans for their service, but I didn't really understand and comprehend what their service really was. And I felt like this was a great opportunity to learn more about their service and be able to give back to the veterans that have sacrificed their lives for our great nation. In order to properly answer the question of why is the veteran important, I thought it would be crucial to better understand who the veteran is. I decided the only true way to accomplish this task would be to speak with veterans in various branches and ask them questions regarding their service.
What motivated you to join the Army?
I joined right after September 11th.
Many of the veterans with whom I spoke with had some form of family influence on their decision to join the forces, whether it be from parental influence or family history.
My brother, who's 2 years older than me, joined the Marines, so I couldn't let him outdo me, so, decided to go to the Marines, yeah.
It was also common that the veterans simply joined because they wanted to be a part of something greater than themselves.
I wanted to join just to serve our country. I always wanted to be a teacher. I'm a high school teacher, but I wanted to serve before I taught.
The veterans also mentioned their desire to help others as influencing their decision in joining the armed forces.
My biggest factor in joining the Air Force was just doing something bigger than myself. The ability to do it for America and our country.
I want a good life for my future family.
In doing their jobs, they offered global support to foreign lands and people, and thus their service directly and indirectly contributed to bettering the world.
It's devoting your life, your time, spending months at times away from your family in hopes of making the world better for those around you.
I think that's actually a really big deal that not a lot of people realize. You're spending months away from in a place that you've never been to in your life.
Their service to civilians everywhere makes America the greatest land, the land of the free and home of the brave.
I enlisted. I wanted to do it. I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States.
They fight battles so the rest of us do not have to, so we can live peaceful, prosperous lives with freedoms many countries, in which they are stationed, do not have.
There's people fighting for their lives, fighting for our lives. It just means something else. And I personally haven't been through any life-threatening experiences like that, but I'm prepared to be. I'm willing to go through it.
Like Douglas MacArthur said, no man is entitled to the blessings of freedom unless he be vigilant in its preservation. Without their service, Americans would not have the opportunities and freedoms that are in place that many of us take for granted. This Memorial Day, I'm entering our celebration by having a greater appreciation for our veterans and their sacrifice, and really understanding and engaging through this essay what it means to give their lives.
There are millions who have made the ultimate sacrifice, and that should always be respected and appreciated and cherished for us as Americans.
There's a lot of sacrifices to make us where we are today and the privileges we have.
Never forget them. Always keep in your heart or in your mind their love for you.
If you see a veteran or you know a veteran, tell them thank you for their service. They don't want praise, they don't want honor, they just want our help. Help when they come back from overseas to return to civilian life.
It goes so far, seeing a veteran on the street saying thank you for your service, thank you for your time, or just asking them a story, asking them a question of what they did, how they did it. That's a great opportunity for us to learn about that and cherish them and thank them for those opportunities they've given us.
As you all know, 4 young men, 4 Kingsway Dragon graduates, lost their lives defending our country. They are Donald Lee Corbin, class of 1965, Stefano James Fiducioso, class of 1965, Dennis Philip Martin, class of 1968, and Ryan Kenneth Ionelli, class of 2002. In addition to our 4 graduates, Robert E. Monahan, who attended Kingsway Regional High School, also lost his life in Vietnam in 1967. We are honored each year to be joined by friends and family members of these young fine men. Through this annual ceremony, we will continue to ensure that their character, their deeds, and the sacrifices of these outstanding men and soldiers are never forgotten, and we express eternal gratitude to these men and to their families. To all of the men and women who have lost their lives in defense of this great country, we honor your memory and express our sincerest thank you. To all of the families who have lost loved ones who died defending their country, be comforted in the knowledge that their deeds will not be forgotten. As a gesture of gratitude, let's please give these families a round of applause. I'd also like to take this time on behalf of the high
Going to
school
be in the-
administrative team. I would like to acknowledge those faculty and staff who serve on our Memorial Day committee. I will ask that they stand to be acknowledged for their hard work and dedication to this cause. Audience, please hold your applause until the end. Mr. Andrew Young, Mrs. Chris Bianis, Ms. Dawn Marchetti, Mr. Jason Barringer, Mr. David Stanton, Mr. Stan Ritter, Mr. Ed Moody, and Mrs. Sue Barber. I would also like to thank our technology team, our music department, our custodial staff, and of course our cafeteria staff for their contributions as well. I would also like to acknowledge our superintendent, Dr. James Lavender, our board president, Jennifer Carvalho Frum, and the entire Board of Education, as well as all of the members of the administrative team for their continued support of this program. I'd like to continue with some thank yous. At this time, I would also like to thank all of our dignitaries and guests from our sending schools, our local municipalities, and the entire community have taken their time out from their busy schedules today to take part in our ceremony and pay their respects to our soldiers. Most importantly, I would like to recognize all of those veterans and soldiers of the U.S. military who are seated behind me today, and all those who have served in defense of our country. We offer you a profound thank you for putting your lives on the line so that the past, present, and future generations can be free. Thank you for your service to our country. At this time, will all veterans in attendance, wherever you are seated, please stand so that we may show you our appreciation. Additionally, let us show our appreciation for those members of the Kingsway Regional High School class of 2023 who have officially made the commitment to serve their country. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing. I ask that everyone hold their applause until all students have been announced. Rachel Anacola, U.S. Air Force. Aiden Ford, U.S. Marine Corps. Kai Ho, U.S. Navy. Jamili Martinez, U.S. Army Reserves. Jacob Mason, U.S. Air Force Academy. Leonard Mears, U.S. Navy. Patrick Norris, U.S. Army National Guard. Dakota Reichelderfer, U.S. Navy. Hamaza Toure, U.S. Air Force Reserves. And Luke Wertelman, U.S. Naval Academy. Please. Thank you again to the class of 2023 members who have answered the call to serve our country. Thank you. Finally, I would like to direct your attention to the empty seat representing the prisoners of war and those missing in action, and our undying promise to bring all of our soldiers home and to bring closure to those who still wait. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now hear a musical selection, The Pride of America, by our Kingsway Regional High School Combined Choirs and Concert Band under the direction of Mr. Joe Henderson and Mr. Anthony Sinagoglio. Thank you. We will now hear from our student speakers, Brooke Dorfy, Marissa Landy, and Addison Torres.
Liberty's children, our sons and daughters. It is too often that the image clutched in the hand of a mother transforms from one of a smiling 6-year-old missing his 2 front teeth to an image of a young, grim-faced soldier surrounded by the soot of battle. Scraped knees have turned into bullet wounds that even the nurturing touch of a mother cannot undo. Packed lunches made by a loving and careful hand, sealed with a note as a reminder that mommy loves you, are now wartime rations and letters sent across an ocean. Nerf guns have become assault rifles, and toy planes and battleships are not plastic figurines existing simply for playtime. They are now terrifyingly real. And instead of playing in sandboxes at recess, someone's son or daughter is searching through the ashes of a battlefield for the remains of the fallen. President Jimmy Carter once said, "War may sometimes be a necessary evil, but no matter how necessary, it is always an evil, never a good." We will not learn to live together in peace by killing each other's children. Every liberty we have today has come at an irreparable price, an unpayable debt we owe to the mothers and fathers standing at the foot of an American flag-laden casket with nothing left of their child but memories.
The realization. As we walk through the doors of Kingsway, we begin to gather with friends and experience all types of emotions, such as happiness, laughing, and smiling, to awkwardness and boredom, just like Stefano James Fiducioso, Donald Lee Corbin, Dennis Philip Martin, and Ryan K. Iannelli once did. As they walked these same halls in different graduation years, they were just like us, waiting for the last day of school, just wanting to be free from the loads of work given in order to succeed. The last day of school would be presented to them as an uplifting and exciting day, until a year or so goes by and their friends realize it was the last time they ever saw them. In a split second, everything vanished from one's eyes and becomes an unbearable moment of grief to the families of their fallen child. Private Stefano James Fiducioso, described by relatives as loyal, caring, polite, and also a bit hard-headed, walked these halls of Kingsway. He played on the varsity football team and sang in the Glee Club. He graduated in 1965. Steve enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1967 because he felt it was his duty to serve. In the early morning of November 2nd, 1967, Private Fiducioso's platoon from Mine Company was attacked by a Viet Cong commando unit composed of 100 men. Fiducioso was one of the 10 men who were killed in action that day, 2 years after he graduated from high school, only 20 years old. In a split second, everything vanished from one's eyes. Private First Class Donald Lee Corbin, otherwise known as Tabby, did not make it to his 20th birthday because he sacrificed his life for America. He was known to be a shy kid who had interests such as baseball, horse, and in an apparent attempt to overcome his shyness, public speaking. Tabby enlisted in the Army, and after basic training, they sent him to Texas for medical training. Not even fully trained, the Army pulled his outfit out of classes after only a few weeks and prepared them as best as they could for Vietnam. Unfortunately, Alpha Company came under attack on August 8th. In this battle, Tabby gave his life trying to save another. In a split second, everything vanished from one's eyes. Private First Class Dennis Philip Martin, a running back, number 32 on Kingsway's football team. Dennis is remembered as quiet, well-mannered, one who had dedication and loyalty to everything he did. We turn to our friends and families laughing because we all know that one person who has that one contagious laugh. Well, that was Dennis. The laughter was able to turn anyone's mood from upset to happy. He was drafted into the Army in 1969, and by 1970, he received orders for Vietnam. That same year, on February 22nd, Dennis was killed in an explosion. In a split second, everything vanished from one's eyes.
The significance of a street sign. Ryan K. Ionelli Boulevard. I read from a street sign as my bus slows to a stop. I whip my backpack across my shoulder and make my way down the steps and proceed to my house, flushing away the curiosity of the name I had just encountered. I open my door and step into my home as its presence engulfs me with a sense of comfort, familiarity, and memories. From there, I return to my room where I continue the rest of my day with studying, playing games, and laughing on calls with friends. Ryan K. Ionelli is a name that is absorbed in the roots of our hometowns. Ryan K. Ionelli is a name that whistles in the wind on a cold winter at dusk and shines down from the sun's rays on a humid summer morning. And Ryan K. Ionelli is a name that I saw every day of my life. But I had no clue who he was until now. On September 28th, 2011, Ryan was killed in a helicopter crash amidst the haunting hostility that the Afghanistan war brought to countries across the globe. Ryan and others engaged in combat against al-Qaeda in response to their terrorist attack launched upon American soil on September 11th, 2001. Succeeding him dedicating his freshman through senior years at Kingsway, Ryan attended Oral Roberts University and later became an honorable member of the United States Marine Corps. After reaching out to her through social media, I had the opportunity to speak with Ryan's mother, Donna, on the phone. She described him as a tender-hearted man who loved challenges, and that whenever she thought of him, she thought of the word joy. She also shared memories of Ryan celebrating the exhilarating last-inning home runs of his baseball games, which he took very much pride in as he dreamed of becoming a major league player. As captain of the 2002 team, Ryan led Kingsway baseball to the conference championship, won the coaches and most valuable player awards, and set the single-season record for stolen bases. After having fulfilled his role as a National Honor Society student, a sportsman-like teammate, and a reliable friend at Kingsway, Ryan would step into his home as a brother and a son, welcomed by the aroma of his mother's home-cooked Italian meal baking in the oven and the presence of his family gathered around the dinner table.
Ryan was a student like you and I. He shared many of the same interests, course loads, and teachers as a number of you gathered here today. Mr. Moody, our AP United States history teacher, was Ryan's senior year study hall teacher. He was an overall presence at the school, Mr. Moody expressed. Nobody at the school didn't know who Ryan Ionelli was. Ryan was president of the student council, named most spirited student his senior year, and above all, a child of God. Miss Rebecca Pop, Ryan's cousin and CP English 4 teacher at Kingsway, Miss Connie Erickson, his former math teacher, and Mr. Moody all agreed on one major characteristic of Ryan. He was just a good kid. Ryan also possessed musical talent. He filled his life with the lyrical sound of his voice, in laughter, song, and testimony, the sweet resolve of a chord on the piano, the atmosphere encompassing ricochet of the strike of a drum. The silence of Ryan's death was just as loud as the vibrance of his life. The procession at Kingsway following Ryan's passing consisted of loved ones, friends, community members, students who had been freshmen the year Ryan graduated, had siblings who knew him, and students who had never even heard of him until that very day. And yet these people, despite how or when or even if they crossed paths with Ryan in their life, had one thing in common as his body was escorted from the middle school to the high school: silence and reverence for the remarkable life he lived, the remarkable person he was, and the remarkable sacrifice he made for all Americans.
Ryan had hobbies he loved and found peace from, just like us. Ryan had ambitions that he worked hard for, just like us. And Ryan had friends, family, and a home to find comfort from, just like us. But now he doesn't. He will never be able to return to the same couch where he sat watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a young boy. He will never be able to find the passion and fire that sparked his soul as he stepped foot onto the fields of wet grass just as the first baseball game of the season began. And he will never be able to speak with or see his best friends, teammates, sister, father, or mother ever again. He has sacrificed all of his relationships, interests, and desires so that we as a collective society can enjoy ours.
The uniform is a representation of one who risks their life for every one of us. But there is a person underneath that uniform, someone's child. Their parents feel all types of emotions while being unsure what emotion to feel entirely. Pride, to know their child's defending our country. Anxiety, the feeling of their stomach turning each day not knowing whether or not their child will come home. Or fear, the sound of a knock at the door.
The courage of Private Stefano James Fiducioso, Private First Class Donald Lee Corbin, Private First Class Dennis Philip Martin, and Captain Ryan K. Iannelli is a rarity. Yet, we are capable of our own courage. We can have the courage to continuously and profoundly familiarize ourselves with the sacrifice of the fallen, to make a vow to see 1,420,442 Americans killed in action, not as a number, but as individual lives that were given for our sake. On this Memorial Day, as you are headed to the shore or prepping for barbecues with your family, think of the empty seats left at dinner tables for those who never made it back. Think of the parents who hugged their children goodbye for the very last time. Think of the words, "Thank you for your service." We must do more than thank. We must understand, we must remember, we must honor. We must live our days like the children who grew up to give their lives rather than living to become the mothers and fathers of their own children.
Ryan Iannelli did not know me, but he, like many others, still risked his life and lost it for me, everyone in this room, and everyone across the nation. I didn't even know of him despite his name literally being the name of my own road. I stand before you all with pride, knowing that has changed. Now, whenever my bus passes the street sign, I see not only the name Ryan K. Iannelli labeled in white, but who he was, his legacy, and the ultimate sacrifice that he made on behalf of America.
The following poem appeared in the In Memoriam section of the Woodbury Times about Donald Lee Corbin by his mother, Dorothy, and his sister, Margaret. I feel as if this poem not only represents Donald, but all of the fallen heroes. You are not forgotten, loved one, nor will you ever be. As long as life and memory last, we will remember thee. We miss you now, our hearts are sore. As time goes by, we miss you more. Your loving smile, your gentle face, no one can fill your vacant place.
Thank you to all of our fallen soldiers,
especially to Stefano James Fiducioso, Donald Lee Corbin, Dennis Philip Martin,
and Ryan K. Iannelli.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to have another musical selection, Prayer of the Children by the Kingsway Dragon Singers. like to welcome our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Lavender, who will introduce our keynote speaker today.
First, I'd like to recognize the beautiful music we've listened to this morning, and I'd ask for one more round of applause for our choir, concert bands, and our dragon singers. On behalf of our entire Dragon family, let me begin by extending our deepest gratitude to the men and women in uniform, to all those families near and far who have sacrificed so much to give us, the living, so much. I also, on behalf of our Dragon family, extend again another very warm welcome and appreciation to all our veterans who are with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here, and thank you for your service. On Monday is Memorial Day. We're getting an early start on the holiday, and it no doubt will be a holiday with beautiful weather. Most of us will be on ball fields or picnics or in pools. And perhaps this moment will be past us. On Monday, every American is called at 3 o'clock to participate in a national moment of remembrance. And it's an idea that every American at the same moment will give attention to the men and women in uniform who have died in all of the wars throughout our nation's history. Your challenge here today is to participate in that. I ask you to think a little bit about the men and women who have died. I ask you to think about the powerful words you heard this morning from our student speakers about our fallen dragons. And I ask that you think about what it means to be an American and what it is you can do and what we all can do as Americans to make this country even better. For that is the best way for us to pay honor and tribute to our fallen soldiers, to live the lives that they could not live. So Monday at 3 p.m., I ask you to stop and participate. This morning, I have the high honor of introducing this year's keynote speaker, Major Rich Colton. Major Colton enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1999 and completed basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. And after the terroristic attacks on September the 11th, he had told me he was inspired to take on a larger role within the military, that he felt something deep inside him that called him to do more as an American soldier. As a result, he chose the path to become an officer. In 2008, Major Colton deployed with the 50th Infantry Brigade combat team and served as headquarters company commander in Baghdad, Iraq, the largest company in the 50th Brigade and part of the largest deployment of New Jersey soldiers since World War II. His team's mission was to guard insurgents in detention facilities, provide convoy security, and help Iraq's transition from an occupied country to a republic. Throughout Major Colton's 21 years of military service, he had held a variety of positions, including commander of the 328th Military Police Company, battalion's operations officer, battalion intelligence officer, and as an instructor at the Albania Military Academy. His decorations are plenty, and here are a few. He earned the Army Achievement Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, the Humanitarian Service Medal, the Iraq Campaign Ribbon, and the Bronze Star for meritorious service during combat operations in Baghdad. As a civilian, Major Colton continues to answer the call to service as a history teacher, and this year he is completing his 18th year at Eastern Regional High School. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a very warm Kingsway welcome to our keynote speaker, Major Rich Colton.
Thank you for that great intro, Dr. Lavender. So students, Dr. Lavender, Ms. Fox-Mano, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, thank you. Kingsway High School and the 5 communities it serves has a reputation of being what I like to call a core American community. This is the kind of place that the country has depended upon for a long time to send its sons and daughters to serve the nation's military. It's the kind of community that has borne a terrible and disproportionate cost in terms of the number of her children taken in wars and conflict. Whenever I have the opportunity to visit Kingsway High School, as I do from year to year, I'm consistently impressed by the number of servicemen and women who come from your school. The number of your fallen dragons speaks to the civic commitment which is unmatched by other towns and cities in our state. I was asked to speak to you all today on the theme of Memorial Day. And when thinking about what I wanted to say about Memorial Day, I thought first about my own veteran story. I'd like to share just a little of that with you. And so that story begins in an auditorium, kind of like this one. I didn't know what I wanted to do after graduation, so like some of you, I suspect, will do this. I went to college. When I was in college, the people behind me will laugh at this. When I was in college, I racked up an incredible amount of student loans in the amount of $10,000. So I saw the Army as an opportunity to pay off those loans and continue my education for free. My parents were reluctant. They didn't want me to join. Their generation came to age just after Vietnam, and frankly, there wasn't a whole lot of military service in my family aside from my grandfather. I assured them that I would be perfectly safe because I did the research, and I was enlisting in the reserves, and the unit that I was to be joining hadn't seen active combat since World War II, and I said to Mom, it's going to take the outbreak of a global war for me to get sent to combat. Your English teachers will call that foreshadowing. So the next year was 9/11, and there I was a 20-year-old specialist in the field artillery. President Bush went on TV that night and told the country to be calm, and he said to the military, he said, get ready. So a few weeks later, I found myself, right after 9/11, leading a squad of soldiers guarding the George Washington Bridge, the remains of the World Trade Center, and unrecovered bodies of thousands of Americans were still smoking in the background. Like Dr. Lavender said, the Iraq War commenced in 2003. During the surge of 2008-2009, I commanded an infantry company in Baghdad. We successfully executed hundreds of successful missions. What we did ran the gamut from detainee operations to humanitarian operations to helping the government of Iraq stand on its own 2 feet. I didn't enlist in the military thinking that I would be sent to war, but there I was, leading young Americans in combat, which was the greatest honor of my life. And folks, when I say Americans, I mean that every single person on that deployment was an American. We had soldiers that were born in Ghana and Costa Rica and Ukraine and Poland and Portugal, but every man and woman who puts on this uniform is an American. Redeployed in 2009, I resumed my civilian job. For the next 10 years, I served in a variety of command and staff positions, and finally, gratefully, I retired in 2021. The theme of today's presentation is called Liberty's Children. And in keeping with the spirit of that theme, I'd like to just offer you some thoughts on how I see Memorial Day and how it relates, or even if it relates, to your generation. 70 years ago, literally every American had a personal and sometimes painful connection to Memorial Day. Between 1941 and 1945, 16 million Americans served in the armed forces. Everyone knew someone who served. Everyone knew someone who had been wounded or killed. The VFWs, the American Legions, Catholic War Vets, Jewish War Vets posts were community hubs and neighborhood centers. They were the places that you gathered for birthdays and for holidays. That era is now over. We live in a time where wars are fought by an increasingly isolated and insulated group of men and women. Fewer than 0.5% of Americans serve in the military today. And thankfully, the number of casualties from recent wars do not match the horrible numbers from our 19th and 20th century conflicts. Few Americans, if any, have a personal connection to anyone who fought in or was killed in a war. And so then what does Memorial Day mean? When I reflect on the meaning of the day, I personalize it. First, I think of my grandfather, Bill. He was shot in the head by a Japanese sniper on Iwo Jima and received the Purple Heart. He survived. I think also of my friend Chris. Chris was an artilleryman in my platoon when I was a young lieutenant. Everybody knows somebody like Chris. I always knew it was getting close to 3:30 or 4 because Chris would regularly find himself in my office with an excuse to cut out early. That was his thing. Say, sir, hey, sir, can I leave a little early? I have a dentist appointment. Or, hey, sir, I need to get my brake fixed. And finally, I pulled Chris aside and said, man, what's up? Turns out he was trying to get home to spend as much time possible with his infant son before a deployment. And whenever he talked about his son, his eyes would light up. Chris was killed on the 4th of June, 2004 by an improvised explosive device in Baghdad, and he never got to see his son turn 3. I think also of my friend Wes. Wes was an Air Force captain assigned to my unit with the 50th Brigade. He was an Air Force Academy grad who started for the Academy football team. Wes was married to an Air Force test pilot. They had their entire lives ahead of them. The night of February 1st, 2009, it was Super Bowl Sunday. Another soldier was cleaning his weapon when he negligently discharged his gun, hitting Wes in the head. He was evacuated to our medical base in Landstuhl, Germany, where after extensive emergency brain surgery by some of the best doctors on the planet, his life was saved. He lost part of his skull and part of his brain, but he survived. Those are my Memorial Day connections. Whether you know it or not, everyone sitting in this room today has that connection, because even if you didn't know one of your fallen dragons, you are part of their legacy. You guys walked the same hallways. You showed up, sometimes on time, sometimes not, to the same classrooms. Shared some of the same teachers and administrators. So no matter where you go after this, for as long as you live, your connection to Kingsway is your bond to their memory and to their legacy. That's a gift that they've given to all of you. They've nobly advanced a task and gave their last full measure of devotion, and now their memory serves as an enduring link. They gave their lives in defense of liberty. You are liberty's children. A question that I sometimes get asked as a veteran about Memorial Day is if it's okay to celebrate. On a holiday like this, whose origins are solemn, is it proper to have fun today? And my answer to that enthusiastically is yes. You absolutely should have as much fun as possible. The people who paid the ultimate price for you did that so you can enjoy yourselves. Consider it, please, your patriotic duty to have fun this holiday weekend. Celebrate their sacrifice by being happy. In between hot dogs and hamburgers at 3 p.m., please take a moment to consider that sacrifice. If you find yourself so moved, and if you want to help, there are a number of ways you can do it. Let me take just a minute to tell you about an organization called the Disabled Veterans National Foundation. That foundation supports vets who are experiencing homelessness. Today in America, there are 38,000 homeless vets. Let me say that again. In America today, there are 38,000 homeless vets. It's a shame, it's a disgrace. In a country like ours, the words homeless and veteran do not belong in the same paragraph. Many of our returning veterans have disabilities and suffer from wounds both seen and unseen. If you can help, please do so. They need it. There's no better way to honor the memory of a fallen soldier than by, quote, taking care of him who shall have borne the battle for his widow and for his orphan. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for your time and your attention today. This is my first experience with Kingsway's Memorial Day celebration. I'm just blown away by all of you students and the music and the student speakers. I'm really humbled and honored by all of this. This is just amazing. And specifically, I'd like to thank my friend Andrew Young for inviting me here today. So Semper Fi, Devil Dog, and go Dragons. Thank you.
All right, we are entering the scholarship portion of our ceremony today, and I have the great honor to present the Ryan Iannelli Scholarship. Just a little bit about this scholarship. This scholarship opportunity was open to all 2023 Kingsway Regional graduating seniors. The task was to compose an original 300 to 500 word essay entitled America, Sweet Land of Liberty. Within this essay, the student was asked to describe from the heart what you feel about America when you read the title, Sweet Land of Liberty. And do you feel America has changed since you began your school years? If so, what are the positive and negative changes? Today, I have the honor of awarding a 1,000 scholarship to two very deserving dragons. I do want to note, we got a note from Mrs. Iannelli that normally this scholarship goes to one student, but both essays this year were so good that they decided to award two scholarships. It was truly a tie, both beautiful and embodied Ryan's heart. We have only done this once before. So I would like to honor both Ella Stevenson and Daniel Allen as the Ryan Iannelli Scholarship winners. At this time, we are nearing the end of our program, and I ask that you continue to remain as respectful and attentive that you have to this point. Thank you. We are now going to honor those soldiers who have made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms.
This flag represents those soldiers who fought and died in the Revolutionary War.
This flag represents those soldiers who have fought and died in the Civil War.
This flag represents those soldiers who have fought and died in World War I.
This flag represents those soldiers who fought and died in World War II.
This flag represents those soldiers who fought and died in the Korean War.
This flag represents those soldiers who fought and died in the Vietnam War.
This flag represents those soldiers who fought and died in Iraq and Afghanistan.
This flag represents Donald Lee Corbin, class of 1965, who fought and died in the war in Vietnam.
This flag represents Stefano James Fiducioso, class of 1965, who fought and died in the war in Vietnam.
This flag represents Dennis Philip Martin, class of 1968, who fought and died in the war in Vietnam.
This flag represents Ryan Kenneth Ionelli, class of 2002, who fought and died in the War on Terror.
liberating strife.